this is an Olympic sport. Could I go to the Olympics one day? I won't stop until I've got there. I had such a belief in my own ability that I could be the best. When there is failure and things go wrong, it doesn't mean give up. You got to keep going. It was just so nice to be able to have a shoulder to cry on and have someone to be there in my corner. Without him, I definitely wouldn't be where I was today. He knew if you had a little gift and he just wanted to help you express it, and it was just so amazing. It's not just on a physical level or a mental level or an emotional level. It's a personal level. I've got that hunger, the drive, the dedication. This is my life. I've got one shot at this. How good could I be?
My name is Kyla Colbin. You're listening to my interview with Tori Moorby, and this is the Hunger and Heart Podcast. Enjoy the show. Hello, my name is Kyla Colbin, and welcome to episode 17 of Hunger and Heart, a podcast on the intersection of wild ambition and fierce compassion. Before we begin, a quick reminder, the biggest thing you can do to support the podcast is like, comment, subscribe, share. Your engagement is crucial for us to get better guests and bring you better episodes. And of course, if you have any feedback for me, you can reach me on hello@kylacolbin.com. My guest today is Tori Moorby. Tori has been dominating the javelin throw in New Zealand since March of 2014. When she first broke the New Zealand record, she was just 19 years old. Since then, she's broken her own record over and over again, currently sitting at an astonishing 63.26 meters. In this conversation, we talk about her insatiable ambition, why she doesn't like team sports, and the first person she calls after a competition. So, here you are. My conversation with Tori Moorby. What is your experience with wild ambition and fierce compassion?
Yeah, oh my goodness. I think, I think it would be just encompassing so far my journey as a professional javelin thrower. And, but also at the same time, I think it's the side of my life as well that is dedicated to, another job where I give back to the next generation, our young students and future sporting athletes, and just being able to combine the two of those, I think is something that I don't know. It's something that's really passionate. I'm really passionate about, and it's like pursuing something that I want to do, but at the same time giving back, giving back to the next generation along my journey.
Amazing. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions first about your journey, and then I'm going to ask you about the kids and the work that you do in terms of that kind of giving back. First of all, javelin.
Yes.
I mean, what a cool sport, what a interesting sport, what a unique sport. It's, talk to me about how you got into javelin, and then I'm going to ask you questions about the sport itself, which I don't usually go into the tactical of it, but I have questions.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So how'd you get into it?
So it was at high school. My sister had done it, and I sort of, she'd sort of dabbled in it. And then I, being the 2 years younger sibling, came along and thought, you know what, she can do it. I could probably do it better. And just being super competitive that I guess that we are as siblings as well. I got my opportunity to try it out in a PE lesson in year 10. And just picked it up and naturally threw it quite far and thought, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. Like, it's pretty badass, I get to throw a spear and that sort of thing as well. So it was pretty awesome. And it was actually my first athletics day. I think I broke the school record, just off the bat kind of thing. And it sort of all just sort of snowballed from there. I guess once you win that school sports day, it sort of goes on to the next, regional championships, and then South Islands and nationals and all that sort of thing. And it was sort of an evolution of that, really. So I just sort of did that most like every year, and and then yeah, here I am now, a professional javelin thrower. It's crazy. It's really interesting.
So you start out, you
Hmm.
you do this in PE class, you do the school champs, and then did you go straight from there into like hardcore
No,
competition?
no,
Okay.
not at all. So I was that kid at school that loved sport, jack of all trades, involved in everything under the sun, and naturally quite gifted at sort of whatever I tended to pick up. So um, for me, it was sort of like just adding another sport to the list of sports that I already did. So yeah, so I played netball, grew up playing tennis, played rugby, basketball, volleyball. Yeah, like I said, a lot of different things. So it sort of just worked out that javelin was, it was a summer sport, so athletic season. So it just sort of rolled around, in the summertime, and my main sports were really team sports. So netball, volleyball, rugby, basketball, all winter dominant. So in the summertime, I'd still keep really fit and that sort of thing, but and for my team sports, but I would dabble a little bit in javelin. And at the time, there was a man in Gore at the athletics club there. His name was Murray Speedon, and he actually was a decathlete back in his day, and also obviously within that knew how to throw a javelin. And he had sort of seen my sister and I, and he actually had shoulder tapped my sister before I got involved, and to just come along and potter along and just keep throwing the javelin every now and again, and just see sort of where it goes. And he she did that, and then along came me wanting to be better. And so he would have the two of us just sort of like, I guess he would just sort of call it, yeah, pottering along. It's sort of just once a week we'd sort of go and throw, and it would just be on the grass. I mean, it was nothing major. It was just sort of make sure we were keeping a little bit of a touch on the javelin, really, and just staying interested. And he was teaching us along the way, because I mean, like, my goodness, like, I had no idea what the bloody hell that event even was. I mean, like, I was so green, just had no idea, didn't know anything about the technique, and so we were really, really fortunate to have Murray. And I can tell you now, like, without Murray, doing that for us and giving up his time and yeah, volunteering his weekends and all that sort of thing, I definitely would not be throwing a javelin still. It's just there was no awareness of or pathway for a javelin thrower in New Zealand, so how could I possibly know or want to commit to that as a profession or, as a career? So yeah, we were really fortunate to have him. And I guess over those years that I was at high school, it was just that each year progressively got better and better. And yeah, and just got more interested, I guess, with that. And then obviously with success, you get a little bit more hungry to want to be better as well. And then ideas start floating around your head that this is an Olympic sport, and could I go to the Olympics one day? And so there's all these sorts of things that start coming into my mind, and you're representing New Zealand and wearing the fern, and what would that look like? And so yeah, I sort of just progressed through my school years, still throwing the javelin, but still very much buried in team sport, very much buried in it. So I guess for me, netball was more so what I saw being the pathway of being a professional athlete. And that was more because my sister did it. So I could see the pathway and I could see what that looked like. I knew the stepping stones because she had done it. So um, yeah, so that was sort of more where I thought I was going to go. And it wasn't until I went to university in Dunedin, and it was sort of, yeah, halfway through my second year that I actually just fully prioritized javelin throwing and training and gave up my other sports. So it was, I guess, in the scheme of things, as a track and field athlete, that's quite late to specialize and decide that's what you're doing. I know a lot of the girls on the circuit, they had all grown up doing it, from the age of 14 and quite competitively, so but that was understandable because track and field in Europe and in the States and things is such more of a dominant sport, whereas here you grow up wanting to be a netballer or a rugby player, so it was quite different for me. So yeah, I feel like I was a little bit late to the party there, but better late than never.
Is it normal that in javelin you actually start it later though than other specialties because of the technically because it's a weapon effectively.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, that was the reason why we weren't allowed to throw it any earlier at high school than what I did. Year 10, you're 16 years old, and yeah, it was a safety thing, I believe. But in Europe, it seems to be that, as soon as you want to start athletics, you just go along and you just do whatever you want, and there's someone there that knows what they're doing, and away you go.
You hope, right? Kids running all over Europe with like javelins stuck through them. Okay. So I want to ask you about Murray. So
Yes.
Murray, you wouldn't be throwing a javelin today if it weren't for him. He gave up his time. He was a decathlete. He shared that with you. When I hear you describe just now the relationship that you had with him, it sounds quite casual to me. Like I don't know what the relationship was like, but it sounds quite casual. Like, yeah, sure, I'll show up and help you throw the javelin a little bit. And yet here you are operating at a global level in this sport and saying you wouldn't be doing it without him. Can you talk to me a little bit about what was it about him? Was it just that he gave you his time, or what was it about him that was so special for you?
Man, I think that was a big part of it. And if you met Murray, oh yeah, he just has this presence about him. He's such a lovely man, and I mean, like, to this day, I get back from my competitions overseas, and I'm driving back from the Auckland airport down to Hamilton, and I get on the phone and I call him, and we debrief my competitions, and I call him, and he just loves it. Like, I think he's just he just gets so much excitement and enthusiasm out, like, out of you. And he was also a great teacher, and I think the big thing about that was because he had done the event himself, so he knew what it felt like, he knew what it should look like. And I guess as well, he was able to break it down simply, which is what you need to be able to do. It's not a very easy event to pick up, it's very technical. And as a young 16-year-old girl who had no idea what the hell I was doing, you needed to make it as simple as possible. And he knew that, knew the basics, and he knew that if you just keep tapping away, it'll eventuate to something. And if and that's if you want to pursue it, and you're passionate about it. And yeah, I think his love for it, it was, you could see it, you could feel it, and you could just see he knew if you had a little gift, and he just wanted to help you express it. And it's just so amazing. And like I said, I still, ring Murray today. Every time I go home, I just rock up to his house and knock on his door, and we talk shop about javelin, and I show him some videos. And I'll try to do a training session down home, and he comes along, and then he starts picking my brains about what it is I'm working on. And yeah, he gives a little bit of feedback, and it's honestly, it's really cool. And he's really a special man. And I think, yeah, like I said, without him, I definitely wouldn't be where I was today. But he just gave me that initial piece of understanding as well about what this event's going to be, the demands of it, and just how technical really that it is. Yeah.
Was he hard on you, or were you
No.
hard enough on yourself that you didn't need that?
Yeah, I think he knew that. I was really tough on myself. All myself, my sister, and my brother were all tough on ourselves in terms of our performance, and expectation on ourselves. And he was just he was just there, I guess, to help us, really assist us to get the best out of us. Like I said, he didn't need to be tough. He knew that we were doing all these other sports and this and that. And I think as well, he knew we came from a hardworking, background. Like, our family, my parents are dairy farmers, and we grew up on the farm. And we weren't afraid of hard work. So if we wanted something, we would go after it. And so there was no shortage of him. Yeah, no shortage of hard work from us, and he definitely didn't need to push us in any way. But I think at at times, I think he probably really helped give me a bit more confidence that I could be a javelin thrower. And I think that's the one thing that I probably doubted in myself a bit, because, like I said, I hadn't seen a pathway. I didn't know. The last person that had been to the Olympic Games for javelin was my coach, and she went in 1992 before I was even born. Like, so it's just, like, when would I have seen, a female javelin thrower at the Olympics? So it's yeah, like I said, he's a really special man. Yeah.
It's so fascinating. One of the previous guest that I've had on the podcast is Christy Jenkins, who was #1 in Australia and top 10 in the world across 3 different sports,
Hmm.
trampolining, beach volleyball, and CrossFit. And she talked about the relationship between coach and athlete, and that what the coach gives the athlete is belief. And that's what
Yeah,
I've just heard you say that you got from
yeah,
Murray.
absolutely. And you always, I think an athlete, when they, when they enjoy a sport and when they start to show that they're good at it, there's always that little bit of belief. But if you can't see, what's next, then it's that belief very quickly disappears. And I think, like I said, he just keeps reassured. Like I got reassurance from him, and he just he just kept chipping away. He would ring my parents up and say, "Hey, can we get back down to the to the field for some throwing with Tori this week?" And he believed that I could be something. And I mean, yeah, like I said, look where I am today. Without him, I really wouldn't have continued. I would have pursued the team sport avenue for sure.
I'm going to ask you something that's maybe outside your domain of expertise or something you haven't thought about before. So feel free to just pass on this question. Um, when I heard you say you were not afraid of hard work, you grew up on a dairy farm, you and your sister were both, you push yourselves really hard, and he saw that. Do you believe that there's like for people who are internally driven the way you are, there's one way a coach needs to be, and that there are other people who are not internally driven like that who need a different kind of
Absolutely.
environment?
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. And I think I've seen that with the team sports that I've been in,
Mhm.
and the different coaches that I've had from these different team sports, and even just some of the coaches that I've had now, over my career. Yeah, everyone, is a little bit different in how they, yeah, coach the athlete, because at the end of the day, yeah, you've got the sport, but you've got to coach the athletes. And yeah, I very much believe, yeah, that you need someone a little bit different. For me, having Murray was great because he just guided that hard work, that driven sort of competitiveness, and that I had. Um, Whereas other people, I think, yeah, yeah, it would just be interesting because all coaches are different, but I definitely think you need different. Yeah.
Mhm. And you've had, I think, have you had 3 different coaches?
Yeah, so
And go ahead.
yeah, sorry. I started with Murray, and then when I went to University in Otago, I changed to Raylene Bates, and then from Raylene went to Debbie Strange up here in Hamilton, and then now am with Kirsten Hellier.
And were those changes mostly geographically based, or was it
Yeah,
an evolution of you as an athlete?
both.
Mm.
Yeah, both. So Murray was very much in Gore, high school coach kind of thing, and then continued to on with Raylene when I moved to Dunedin for university. So a bit geographical and just like change in life, right? And then the change from Raylene to Debbie was definitely at the end of my university degree, but it was kind of a time as well where I felt like I'd been in Dunedin for a very long time, and I felt like things were just probably no longer challenging me. I was getting too comfortable. I had not quite met the selection criteria for the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast, and sort of just sat back and had a really good think about what it is that I wanted to achieve, and I very much wanted to go to the Olympics. So yeah, had a bit of time to really delve into what it is that I wanted, think about how I was going to go about, getting to the Olympics. And for me, I needed a change in environment, and I needed a bit more challenge. And um, the only real option for me was to come up here to Hamilton and be based under Debbie Strange, who at the time was the lead javelin throws coach for New Zealand. And so she also had a small group of throwers that she was already working with. So she was working with some male throwers, which for me as well was also a great thing, because I knew that the boys would be better than me, and I needed to be in an environment where I wasn't the best. It was that's how I've always got the best out of myself and my ability is being around people that are better than me. And because there's nothing better I feel, because you've got to try and keep up with them, and they're constantly challenging you. So, and I never wanted to get left behind, and I was super competitive. So that was sort of the transition up to Debbie. And then I think the transition from Debbie to Kirsten was at a time where I thought I needed a little bit of a change, and I needed something new, and I guess I wasn't happy anymore, and I was sort of searching for that next level, in what I thought I needed for my coach, for coaching and for performance and that sort of thing. So yeah, so a little bit different for that last transition to the coach comparative to the other coaches. They were quite geographical, and just sort of a progression of life, right?
Yeah.
But in saying that, I do think that I'm super lucky that I've had all those four coaches. I think each one has served such a invaluable purpose for me in that time of my life. And not only were they a great coach to me, they were amazing friends, mentors, and I guess, they kind of are a bit of a companion for you. You're in javelin throwing, you are in an individual event. It can be very lonely. And, when you're training at the track, it's often just you and your coach. And so you do build quite a strong bond and quite a strong connection. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I've had the people and those people in my life, and that I've been able to work with them. It's been really awesome.
Was it hard to switch?
It was really difficult, and that was 2023, May 2023, when I parted ways with Debbie. That would have been one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. Um, it certainly wasn't easy, and the years of commitment that she gave me and how much she helped me progress in my career as a javelin thrower, and as a person as well, helped me grow as a person. You can't help but feel like I'm just so connected to them and feel really loyal to them. And it's like a relationship breakup. It is so hard. And having that conversation is really difficult because it's not them, the person. And for me, I just really needed a bit of a change. I didn't feel like I was making the progressions that I could keep making, and I think together we had probably reached the end of what we could do together, which is so hard. And it's so hard to tell a person that. And I mean, like, I was an absolute wreck when we had the conversation, because it's just not easy. And it's, yeah, like I said, it is like a relationship breakup, so it's really difficult. Yeah.
What I'm hearing there is that moment of going, why am I here? Am I here to make my coach feel good? Or
Yeah.
am I here to fulfill my ambitions in this sport?
Yeah. And that was the big question I had to ask. I had to ask myself like this, and think about it in terms of, this is my life. I've got one shot at this. And if we were to put all emotions aside, what would you do? And that was the answer. It was, yeah. So it's so hard, right? Because we're all human, and we got big hearts, and when we have this connection with someone, and we've spent so many years, working with them, being away on tour, and sharing all these highlights, these lowlights, through thick and thin, and everything. It is really tough. And I think the biggest thing is that if you can part ways but still maintain that friendship, then that's a really successful, outcome, which
Yeah.
is the optimal and great. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that ambition? I just heard you say, I've got one shot at this. I
Yeah.
listened to some interviews with you prior to this conversation. I heard you say things like, I'm not doing it just to be mediocre. Talk to me about your ambition and what what it feels like inside you when you're contemplating where you want to go with this.
Yeah, I think so. The first part of your question, like the ambition, I think. that's always come from when we were younger. I think it was installed from our parents to always dream big, and if we're going to give something a go, we want to do it, and we want to do it really well. And whether that was a silly chore that we got given on the farm, or like tidying up the gumboot area out in the garage, or it was everything was to be done really well. And then I think that translated really well for us into our sporting aspirations as well. And so I think that sort of all came from that age, and it just sort of was fostered as we grew up, and then with the different environments we've been in as well for our different sports. But for me, the ambition is inside is just to be the absolute best. It's like you don't know what your best could be, and for me, just pursuing that is so exciting, and that's just what gets me up every day. It's that question of how good could I be, and because we don't know that, the ceiling is so high, and we don't know that. So for me, it's just this absolute hunger inside to see how good I really could be with what I've got around me, and the resource and the environment, because I know that I won't stop until I've got there. And I think I've got that hunger, I've got the drive, the dedication. That's not the problem for me. So it's which is, I'm fortunate that that's not an issue. I know some people struggle with motivation and those sorts of things, but for me, yeah, I've got those in my back pocket, and it's like, cool, the world's my oyster. What can I do? So yeah.
I love hearing you talk about this. I am such a fan of ambition. I feel like we need to celebrate it more. Like, go get it. Go get it. What is your thing you want? Go get it.
Yeah.
Go do it. I heard you say in an interview that I was listening to that this interview was from a couple of years ago, so maybe things have changed, but I heard you say on this interview that you had never woken up and gone, oh, I don't feel like training today, which astonished me. I was completely blown away by that. I also saw, and I don't know if this is, if it, I don't know if these people wrote this on your behalf, or if these were your words, but I read an article that said that one of your goals slash aspirations was to compete with integrity and distinction. Can you talk to me about what integrity and distinction mean for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about going out there, and I'm not there to make up the field.
What does that mean?
But so I'm not there to just participate.
Got it.
I'm there to be competitive, but I'm there to be the best version of myself as a competitor, but also a human being. As I get it that sport is competitive, and someone has to win and someone has to lose, but why can't we be out there and celebrate someone else's win? Someone throws a PB, congratulate them. After the competition, thank the officials. Without them, we're not even out there. So it's all of that. Sport is so much bigger than ourselves, and I think that's something that we really need to remember. It brings us all together, which is so cool. We build relationships with people that are from all parts of the world, which is amazing, and we get to have these awesome experiences and create these memories forever. And I think it's so important that when we go out there, we really respect sport, and we respect what we're doing. It's an absolute privilege that we get to do what we get to do out there. And for me, yeah, it's about, especially when I'm wearing the fern, I think, yeah, it's definitely when I'm representing myself as well. But when we wear that fern, there's just so much pride in wearing that. And I think you have to remember that, yep, that performance is for you, but it's also a lot bigger. So with that comes a little bit of responsibility as well, I think.
I'm curious about the relationship or the differences between individual sport and team sport. So, I did a little bit of rock climbing, and one of the things I loved about rock climbing was that my performance was independent of your performance. And
Mm.
so, I'm hyper competitive, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like, I'm in rock climbing, I'm competing against myself because I'm the one who wants to get up this particular route. You've had experience obviously with team sport, and now your sole focus individual sport. I've also heard you talk about loving individual sport because it's all down to you. You're the one who's accountable either way. Was it your experience that that individual accountability and the nature of that sport allowed you to see your fellow participants kind of less as the enemy, or were you always that way with netball or with rugby or with sports where you're kind of more directly against someone?
I to be honest, I loved team sports, but I really struggled with the fact that you were relying on other people. That was really hard for me because I'm so independent and so driven, and like I said, I will, do the work and I found it difficult then because in the team sport, sorry, because yeah, you could lose a game and it could be, it's out of your control. And that infuriated me because, if I'd done my job well but the team still lost, that was infuriating. So for me javelin throwing, yeah, I totally get what you mean about the rock climbing. It's you v you, because it's very similar in javelin. You can go out there and you throw well, and that you can control that, right? I can't control what the other girls are going to throw, so it's me v me, and that just comes with, yes. There's so much that comes with that, and I think that's what really drew me to it, was that there are, you can go out there and have a really good throw, and great, you celebrate the win, and that's great. You've performed well, and along with your team you can celebrate that. But when you don't piece together everything on that runway and the throws are rubbish, there is no one to blame but yourself. Why did that not go right? And that's what comes with independent sport, with independence like that. You've got to be able to take a hard look at yourself and reflect, and ask yourself, why did that not go to plan? And then you can learn, and that's what I find is the most powerful thing, is when those situations happen, you can learn it and then you can be so much better for it. Whereas on the netball court, if we lose the game, I haven't done anything wrong, but just for example, I haven't done anything wrong, but it's been something else. It's like, well, I can't really control that, and so I guess there's that says a lot as well, is that I like to be in control. So
I'm sorry, this is so good. I love it so much.
yeah, that's the independence of the sport, I guess, is what really drew me to it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to piece together a couple of things here. I love this so much. I love your honesty and self awareness. I want to piece together here. I hate having to rely on other people with your new surname.
Moorby.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, how are you finding first partnered life and then married life, and how has that relationship, I know your husband is also in sport as well, how has that relationship informed your commitment to your sport and the way that you go about it?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm so incredibly lucky to have him. He is so supportive of what I do, and he knows how independent I am, and he knows all these little things that I like to be in control, and I'm a bit stubborn, and all the rest of it. So he's great. He really lets me be that. He lets me do that because he knows that that's what I need to do in order to do my job. And but at the same time, I think the longer the longer I've been with Cam, and the more I've got to know him over those years, and now we're married, the more I've actually been able to really lean on him in the tougher times. And I think that has been really important for me, because being so independent, naturally, I don't like to ask for help. And that has been to my detriment at times. And I've carried the weight of the world, well, what I've thought is the weight of the world, on my shoulders, and being bogged down by emotional, turmoil for so long, that I end up, yeah, just not really enjoying what I'm doing as much. Whereas with him, I can really offload if something's on my mind and ask him for his perspective on something, or just asking for help, and him being there and being a bit more supportive, for me, has been really, really great, I guess, in these last few years of my career, where I've had these bigger pinnacle events that have carried a bit more pressure and a bit more weight. And I think there was a particularly tough time was leading into the Olympics, and I remember just being so incredibly worried about not getting there that I just burst into tears, and I'd been selected and everything, and this was all in my preparation, my lead up, and I was here in New Zealand, and I was a few weeks away from going overseas, and I think I was just so scared of the thought of getting injured to then not be at the games and not achieve that goal now that I'd finally been selected, and after all of these years of hard work. And it was just so nice to be able to have a shoulder to cry on for that, and have someone to be there in my corner, understand what it is that I've been through or over all these years, and seeing the commitment, seeing the time invested. He just understood, and to be honest, he didn't even say anything, and that was the best thing. He just listened, and that's what he's really good at. He's good at just listening, and sometimes, and more often than not, I don't. I'll admit this. Not often am I wanting an answer from someone. I just want to be heard. I just want to express and be heard. And then if I do get a little bit of support, like in an answer back, and then it's like, okay, great. But some people who know me know that, yeah, I just need to be heard, and let that emotion out, because I don't often show it in that way. Yeah.
Go Cam. What a dude.
Yeah.
What a dude. I
He's
love
great.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. I want to ask you about another time that was publicly challenging for you, which was non-selection for Tokyo. What was the story? Because my understanding was you had met a certain minimum threshold, and then, like, can you tell me? Just give me
Yep.
the story.
Yep. So there was to qualify via the Olympic standards, you just have to be there's two ways. You can throw the automatic distance, which was 64 meters, or there's a secondary option, which is to be inside the top 32 rankings with that over a certain time period. And I was inside the top 32, and so essentially, great. I thought, great, I've done it. I'm in. Got my invite. Cool, we're going. But the New Zealand Olympic Committee have their own selection standard on top of that. So yes, you're within the top 32, but you actually have to prove from your performances within that time frame that you are capable of making the top 16. So they have number crunches, all sorts going on in the background, and essentially crunch the numbers enough to show that I didn't meet that criteria. And so ultimately they gave me a few opportunities to do so, didn't. Great, okay, and that's sort of how it sort of ends. But that policy is a policy that has been in place, and it's implemented across all sports. It's just that for some sports it actually makes it a lot harder than others.
I'm curious about two things around that. One, I'm curious about how you ultimately reconciled being passed over for selection, but I'm also curious about the process you went through to get to a place of having reconciled that experience.
So yeah, extremely difficult time, and I think it just took time. Like, I just needed time to decompress from the whole situation. It was so heightened emotionally, and there was so much noise around it in terms of fairness, not fair. Everyone had an opinion on it, and again, it was in the media and things like that. So, and I knew people had sort of been in a similar position before. It had happened to others, and so. And then obviously, so that happened, and then obviously there was the games itself that then took place, and so for me, it was just time to let the dust settle on everything that was heightened, and see it for what it was, which was you're not good enough, and you're actually just not there yet, and it's not your time yet. And that's what I had to remind myself of. My dad has always told us that everything happens for a reason in whatever we do. And so missing out on that games, not being picked, like that rejection was essentially just the sign for redirection. I needed to change something. I needed to, we need to stand back, take a look at the bigger picture. Yet you didn't qualify. Your performances hadn't been up to standard. What are we going to do to get you to the level of it being good enough, and so it was so hard. I took some time away, had some time off, spent some time with my family, spent some time away with Cam, and yeah, I mean, I watched the games, and people think I'm nuts for doing that, but I had a lot of friends in that event, and I wanted to support them, and I wanted to watch them, and yeah, it sort of actually helped fuel that hunger and motivation to continue on, because I knew deep down, I knew that I was capable of being there. There was no doubt about it in my mind, and unfortunately, these were just the cards that I was dealt, and yeah, at the time, it sucked and it was so hard, and I thought it was literally like the end of the world. um, but I knew that there was a reason I wasn't there, and I, we don't know what that reason is, but for me, that was enough for me to think, no, I'm gonna carry on. Like, Paris has got my name on it. We're gonna be better for this, and I'm gonna be there in Paris on that runway. So yeah, I think ultimately the big thing was time and just having the right people around you. I was surrounded by my family and my friends, and they were all so supportive of me in that moment and over that time, because they knew just how much it meant to me. But that was, yeah, that they were the two main things, was just time and having that support.
You are in the most, my understanding is I know zero about javelin.
Okay. Okay.
Zero. This is what I've read and what I've listened to in preparation for this conversation. Prior to this conversation, less than zero. My understanding is that javelin is the most technical sport in track and field, and that it is a sport where it's possible to make a perfect throw. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, yeah, everything just aligns in the exact timing to just, yeah, connect on a throw that feels essentially effortless.
What is it why is it so technical? What is it about it that is so technical?
Okay, so first of all, I would break it down in terms of uh the actual movement. So it's a run with a bit of a jump and then a throw. And you think about every other event, there's not a lot of that. Some of the other events, it's just sort of like run and jump, or just run or just jump. And so it's a bit of a run, bit of a jump, bit of a throw. There's the rotational component of it. You're throwing something that is so long and so light past yourself. So you're pulling the implement past yourself, and it's the force, I guess, in which, yeah, you have to apply into the throw that makes it so difficult. You've got to do it. There's speed, power, rhythm involved. Then you've got the elements. So you've got the weather as well. And because the implement is so aerodynamic and so light, they have such an influence on it as well. So, if it's going to be a bit of a headwind for the competition, you're having to adjust. If it's a tailwind, you have to adjust. So there's things like that, that make it so difficult as well. So, you could go a whole season feeling in tip-top shape, absolute form, and you never compete with good conditions. So you would never get, you never get that throw that is sitting there. And I think that's what it makes it a bit hard as well, because you can literally be in the shape of your life, but if the weather gods aren't good to you, then you might not get that big throw out.
What's your relationship like with the concept of luck?
Uh, yeah, interesting question. I believe that you do need, like in sport, everyone needs a little bit of luck, and I think, I just think that I don't have very good luck.
Okay.
Actually, from a young age, I've always thought I don't have very good luck, but um, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure the validity of that, but I definitely think, and actually have been told by a couple of throwers that I've met on the circuit, lovely girls, and they've said that javelin throwing is, yes, it's very technical and you need the weather and that sort of thing, but they have actually said to me, and you need a little luck. And that's how they've when we've talked about things, they've always finished it off by saying, they had, that they've always needed a little bit of luck. And, these are people, these are girls who have, won either European championships or won quite a significant event or pinnacle event, and have admitted to, getting a little bit of luck, fall their way, which, I think it's just, it's quite amazing.
It sounds, I mean, it sounds like the kind of sport where all of the stars have to align. And when you describe the way in which this instrument that is longer than you and so skinny and light and is going to be affected by the winds and all of that, when you describe all that, it reminds me of a movie that came out before you were born, I'm pretty sure, the original Jurassic Park, when Jeff Goldblum is talking about chaos theory and he puts a droplet of water on his hand and he's like, infinite micro changes in the way the hairs on my hand are aligned and the breeze that's come through and whatever, the way I'm holding my hand slightly, whatever might cause the droplet to go this way or that way. And it sounds like that, like you have to get all of it right and you have to be lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting because when you've just connected it all. So we talk about it, throwing the javelin. If you can envision this with me, so you're running straight with this, down the runway, and you've got this big long spear that's sort of behind you, and you're running in this straight line. And when you come toward that final step where you slam your left foot down and you essentially just catapult this javelin, it's like an elastic band. You pull elastic band back and you let it go, and it just launches out, doesn't it? So it's essentially that's what's happening. It launches out. But if you don't launch that out with the forces all going in a straight line, the forces are all end up crossing over each other, right? And so you might have some rotational force going to the left. You might have your javelins gone out the right. There's all sorts going on. And you think, if that's all happening, and all of that force is going in all these different directions and not into the line of the javelin, then the javelin's not going to go very far. So you literally have to line it up all in that straight line, hit it all with the exact timing, exact sequential timing from when that right foot hits the ground, your right foot's down, knee turns in, hip turns in, arm comes through, that whole sequence has to happen all the way up the chain into the last little bit off your finger and in a straight line. And, you think we're running in fast, there's that element of fear when you're coming in to throw as well, because you think we're coming in really fast. We are essentially slamming on the brakes and we're just launching ourselves. It's quite reckless, it's careful, but it's reckless, and so there's a lot that comes with that as well. So I think, to have everything align is really difficult. And I still think my best throws, yes, they've felt effortless, but I've always walked away thinking, oh, I wish I sort of did that a bit better. There's, which is super interesting, right? And then you watch the film and you think, oh, yeah, that could have been a bit better, or that could have been a bit better. So I guess it's so hard to find that perfect throw. And that's what we're all here doing, is trying to find that perfect throw.
I'm curious that because I read an article where you talked about the perfect throw, and I'm curious about that idea of a perfect throw because of course I make up stories about this sport that my ignorance knows no bounds. But a story I make up is, I imagine if I throw, let's say I throw 63.26 and then I throw 64 and then I throw 65, I would always be imagining, surely I can get another few centimeters, or like I would always be imagining there's more to be had. What does it mean that there's a perfect throw?
Yeah, I think it refers to the perfect throw in terms of the feeling, and not quite like the distance and the outcome. It's that it's all connected in that one moment, because I know when you do connect in that one moment, like those my PBs and things, they have felt so effortless, to the point I've walked away and been like, man, I wish I tried harder. And you think that's actually not the case, because whenever you try really hard, often goes absolutely pear-shaped.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more that it's the feeling of a perfect throw. It's the effortlessness that you feel. It's just that, and I think it's a little bit tied into that performance space, right? That just in the zone, and everything just happens. And a lot of people ask, what were you thinking when you threw your PB? And I sort of, it's sort of funny because I always try to think, what was I thinking? And there's nothing, you are absolutely just in the moment. And it's that feeling of, like I said, of the effortlessness, but the in the moment, the silence, the stillness, I think that just fills your body at the time. Does that sort of make sense?
It makes total sense. Is
Yeah.
it having tasted that? Is that one of
Mm.
the things that keeps you hungry?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's that's it's so far and few, but like there's so few of them that you want to hold on to that feeling for as long as possible. And I remember so vividly after I threw my first 62-meter throw, um, my strength and conditioning coach, Angus Ross, he said the most powerful thing you can do, T, is hold on to that feeling. Just try to keep remembering that feeling, like write it down, and that's what it is. And you can remember it for only so long, and especially if it's a long time between drinks of personal bests. So it's hard, but yeah, that's what you're trying to hold on to, is that feeling, like what did that feel like, and not just in terms of the throw, but inside. Yeah.
Mhm. Let's take that inside feeling and bring it back to something we talked about right at the beginning of the conversation that I want to kind of carry us out to the end on, which is your students.
Yeah.
How do you coach them? How do you bring them along? How do you navigate ambition and care with them?
Yeah, so I like to use, I guess, my own personal experiences and share them with them as a way to really, I guess, as well, get across my ambition and help find that in them. And I sort of tell them the story, I guess, about how I got into it. Here's this little farm girl from Gore who picked up a javelin one day and didn't think much of it, and then over time, I guess, thinks, yeah, I could be good at this, and now here she is on the world stage. And I just think for them there should be no limit. You know, you're let your imagination go wild, and if you can dream it, you can be it. Why not? And why not them? So I think, yeah, I really try to use my experiences as living proof of being ambitious, and to chase your dreams and to not give up. And yet, even for the tough times, I was working at St. Peter's when I didn't get selected for Tokyo, and it was actually really difficult as well, because a lot of the kids, they would come to school and say, "Miss, shouldn't you be at the Olympics?" And how hard is that for me to hear? But within that, I was able to use my own experience to show them that, yeah, when there is failure and things go wrong, like, it doesn't mean give up. You got to keep going, and especially if you believe that you can. If because sometimes, I think this is the other thing that frustrated me a little bit about team sports, is that you could be good, but in the eyes of someone else, they may not think that you're the right person for the job. So that's quite difficult. But for me, I had such a belief in my own ability that I could be the best. And so that's obviously why I went that direction of individual sport. But that's another thing I remind the kids, don't give up just because someone has told you that you're not good enough. And so, yeah, I think it's really rewarding and satisfying getting to working with these kids, because they're at a really influential time in their life, and they're at that age, they're like little sponges, and they just want to know everything, and they think it's so cool, and it is cool. I think it is cool that I get to work with them, and pass on this knowledge, and I try to be a bit of a role model for them as well in that space. And yeah, I think being able to see them achieve in their sports, or whether it's they're learning skills through the program I deliver, and it's actually just them applying it later on to life, then that's also quite satisfying, because I know that, not everyone's going to end up on that pathway to the Olympics, and that's fine. Everyone plays sport and likes to be active, and that sort of thing, and not everyone's doing that to go to the Olympic Games, and I get that. So it's about using my experiences, that, in a way that hopefully teaches them some other skills, and things that then can be applied to their life somewhere else down the line.
Amazing. Is that what you were hoping for when you got involved with kids?
Yeah, I think I just really enjoyed uh, the youthfulness that they have. You know, there's so much energy all the time, and kids just say funny things, and they remind you sometimes that, you know, not to stress, just chill out, you know, just have a laugh and be playful, you know, because to them, they just come to school to eat their lunch and, you know, come and hang out with me and, you know, do this and play their sport and see their friends. And, you know, sometimes I think things get on top of us too much that we forget about the small joys. And I feel like kids really remind you of that, which is so nice.
You feel like spending that time with those kids and having them remind you of those small joys has impacted the way that you approach your ambitious training?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's taught me to be less serious. I think that, and not, I don't mean like that I'm a jokester and I just like, you know, I don't do things seriously, but it's just more that I think it's helped in a way to take the pressure off. So I think because I was so ambitious, I would have such high standards for myself, you know, high expectations of myself, and would be so distraught if, you know, I didn't meet those. And I think yeah, working with these kids, and also, to be honest, Kirsten as well, has taught me, you know, to just enjoy it a little more, and that, yeah, you're striving for these outcomes, but actually don't forget the process is the whole thing. You know, it's, if you can have so much fun along the way and meet these people, great memories, and you really enjoy the process of that, the outcome will look after itself. And yeah, I think we get so caught up in this outcome that we forget that we've actually done leading into that. You know, I think about some years that I've, you know, been trying to train and get ready and prepare for these pinnacle events, and I've just been so in this performance mindset and put such high expectations on myself and been really rigid with, you know, what it is that I think I need to do with my training, and I can't do this and I have to do that and blah blah blah, that I actually don't really even remember it, you know, because it actually, I was enjoying it at the time, but that's because I love the challenge of training and things. But was there much fun in it? Not really. You know, and so it's really interesting. The things that I've got really strong memories of are the things that were really fun. You know, and so yeah, it's just super interesting how that in my mind sort of, yeah, has eventuated, but it's only really come in as I've got older, which is also weird, isn't it? That, you know, when you're younger, that's supposed to be when you're having heaps of fun. But I think in my earlier years of my career, when I just sort of started getting into it, 19, 20, 21, you know, of really focusing on javelin, yeah, I think, yeah, there was just a lot of expectation on myself there. And as these years, you know, as I've got to these later years now, yeah, a bit more fun, you know, and yeah, you know, granted, I am traveling the world, we're doing these competitions, I'm meeting these new people, and it is fun, but I think I've learned to really embrace that and use that, as opposed to just, you know, ticking a box and doing it.
Is it true that javelin throwers there have a longer career trajectory than
We
some other
can,
sports?
yeah, yeah. So, um, given you look after your body well, and, you know, and you maintain your fit, you're fit and healthy, and maintain your body well, um, yeah, there's some women on the circuit who have done that and are throwing lifetime bests at 36, 38 years old. It's crazy. There's the world record holder Barbara Spotakova. She was still throwing 60 meters at 39, 40 years old. Like, wild. You know, Australian Catherine Mitchell threw lifetime best at the she might have been 36 or 38. And you know, and even the American couple of years ago, you know, Cara Winger, same thing, 36 years old, throws a lifetime best. Like, it's just amazing. And I think that's what's so exciting about the sport as well, is that there's real longevity in it. And it just shows that as you get a bit older, you start to understand things a little bit more clearly, whether it's the event, whether it's, you know, you understanding what you need, because there is this optimal way to throw a javelin biomechanically, right? But at the end of the day, every thrower is different. Everyone has their own strengths, and it's who can work to their strengths the best, who can bring their weaknesses up enough, and so it's all these things that you need to figure out yourself as well. And then, removing a little bit of that pressure and expectation that you put on yourself to be free, to throw freely on the runway.
I have a hypothesis here, which I don't know if it could ever be proven or disproven. And so I might just hold on to it to keep my own heart happy. My hypothesis is this, that what you've just described in terms of the seriousness of the expectations you put on yourself compared to the equivalent level of ambition and hunger that you have today, coupled with an inner peace of I can enjoy this process and I can be freer to show up for this process. My hypothesis is that inner peace, to be free to enjoy that process, to be free to show up for that process, is what allows you to achieve that perfect throw, that lifetime best. And as a result of that, I am so excited for what's going to happen in LA for you in 2028.
I know, I'm excited too. And I think, as we get older, we get wiser and we learn more. And I think that's a big part of why, as a javelin thrower, we can still perform well at those later years, because there's still so much to figure out, and things are always changing, and we're always learning so much from each competition, each throw, and whether it's learning more about the technique or that sort of thing, or just about ourselves. I think it all adds up, and I just feel like there's so much more. Someone asked me once, what do you need to do to throw 70 meters? And I thought, oh my God, what a question. There's so many things, and it was like, there's not just this like one magic thing. There is so much there. And I think the thing that people forget is that it's not just on a physical level or a mental level or an emotional level, but it's a personal level. You need to, there's an element of figuring out yourself as well, being really comfortable and really happy with who you are as a person and the pursuit, of what you're doing. And just that full well-roundedness of what your life is at the time, particularly because it's so easy for people to bury themselves just in their sport, and the rest is all, they think it's not that important, but I think that those are the most important, are the other bits and pieces, and then you put it all together and it's the big puzzle.
Amazing. What a beautiful spot for us to finish on. Tori, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I've loved it.
No, that's all right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. That was such a fun conversation. I love her combination of like absolutely delightful human being and I am ravenously ambitious, do not get in my way. I love the way she was like, I do not want to rely on anybody. And then the way she spoke about her coaches, about Murray and Raylene and Debbie and Kirsten, was just so wholesome and sweet and tender and so clearly full of love. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun. Thank you again for listening. Please do let me know your feedback. You can reach me on hello@kylacolbin.com. And of course, like, subscribe, follow, hit that notification bell. Your support means everything to the podcast. Thank you so much and see you next week. Hunger and Heart is brought to you by the Crusaders Leadership Programme. Whether you're coaching under fives or a professional team, we all want the same thing: to build a culture of trust, to get the best out of your people, and to grow players into leaders. The Crusaders Leadership Program lets you get up close and personal with some of the greatest rugby legends of all time. People like Sir Wayne Smith, Sam Whitelock, Kieran Read. You'll connect with a global group of ambitious, caring coaches from a range of codes and backgrounds. And most importantly, you'll gain skills and techniques to drive impact and outcomes for your team. The Crusaders Leadership Program is a 2-week high-intensity virtual experience. It is delivered exclusively online, accessible from anywhere. Hunger and Heart listeners get 10% off the full price of the program. Use the code HUNGER at checkout. You can find out more about the Crusaders Leadership Program at crusadersleadership.com. That's crusadersleadership.com. Hunger and Heart is created by BOMA and the entire BOMA team, including Tito Bernal, Ray Jangle, Hannah Hudson, Johanna Coxon, Samuel Unka, and me, Kyla Colvin. Thanks for listening.